When the first 2 seasons of The Bear came out, I'd say that it was probably up there as being one of my favorite TV series, and it was able to achieve what many other strong shows could do in 4 or 5 seasons in just 2. Season 1 was incredible. It laid down the foundation and it almost operated in its own right. It was Carmy, the stress of the sandwich restaurant going under, but the beauty in the cooking and how he was dealing with the death of his brother whilst also balancing the turbulent relationship with his mother. I always remember that final shot of the season being Mikey looking back at Carmy from a memory and it just summing up the entire point of the show. No words were truly needed at the end, and the look that his brother had on his face, that of being proud, was something that cut deep. The second season then built upon it in a way that brought the stress levels up even more. The story got even more engaging, immersive, and we saw how the grief and guilt that Carmy was dealing with was causing him to spiral and also impacting his relationship with his family, with Claire, and the people at the restaurant. Carmy was a broken man, and witnessing him deteriorating was something that truly transcended the screen. These were 2 seasons of television that were simply excellent and just a pleasure to watch. However, season 3 dropped down a peg. It was a disappointment on many levels, and it only really had a couple of good episodes within it, and it just kind of felt like it didn't have that much of the beauty that made the show so good. The emotion, the passion, and the intimacy of being able to step inside the characters' minds. It was just absent. Then, with Season 4 recently being released, it was definitely better than Season 3, and it slightly mirrored what came before it, and that got me thinking about how the show isn't what it once was, and I wanted to look into why it is that a show that was once so strong is starting to have some issues that I just can't look beyond, because it's truly changing. Here is the downfall of The Bear. The focus on the wider cast. Within the previous seasons, it felt like the wider cast got such a generous involvement in the story that was unfolding. Even though the story was about the Berzattos, the family that existed within the walls of the restaurant was actually what truly mattered. Everybody found solace and a family within the Bear. There were previous episodes about Marcus, there was a dedicated episode about Richie, and there was even a flashback episode about Tina, how she came to be there, and that her life changed by the kindness of Mike, the person that kickstarted this whole thing. These are all characters that we see in the wider context of the show, but what this show did so well in its early days was it gave them all importance, showed us their struggles, and we saw that they operated as entirely different people outside the realm of the restaurant, showing that they were in fact human and not just these secondary pieces that we could forget about. Those 3 episodes that I just mentioned are genuinely some of my favorite episodes in the show because what they did so well was they provided emotion, tenderness, and I genuinely felt like I knew the characters on a personal level by the end of them. This is something that doesn't often happen in a TV series. Wider cast members stay as that, and they don't tend to get the focus in a dedicated way. But this threw that approach to the side, and by going down its own route, it was able to elevate its own purpose even further. Yes, Tina might go back to being a side character after Season 3 Episode 6, and in Season 4 she was barely in it, which I didn't really like. But for the brief moment where we did get to look through the window of her life, it contributed massively to the story and that feeling that the show gave me. Within the most recent season of the show, we didn't really get that kind of dedicated focus on characters. There was definitely an opportunity to as well. The likes of Ibra, for example. He sounds like he has such an interesting story to tell, and the show kind of half-baked this idea of giving him the opportunity to work with this mentor, but it didn't quite work in my opinion. It was just a side story that we were chopping between. I still don't know that much about Ibra, and if the show had stayed true to how it once originally was, we would have had a dedicated episode by now. I'd also say that there were certain parts of the story that were kind of just brushed over, which once had such importance. Take the likes of Marcus and his mother. Throughout the entirety of the second season, we saw this man struggling because his mother was on the cusp of dying. And then at the end of the season, she passed away. Honestly, I expected to see the character deteriorate and feel a sense of guilt over neglecting his mother when she truly needed him most, but instead focusing on his career. And then when I think back to it, I don't even really feel like we saw him grieving her, which did surprise me. We kind of just rushed through to the funeral and then it was never really mentioned again. The side characters didn't get as much of a dedicated focus in Season 4, which I think is a bit of a shame. Yes, there was episode 7, which was a phenomenal episode that had all of them in it, and with it being one of the best episodes in the season, I think that shows just how valuable the wider cast are and what those characters bring to the table. This felt like, and it was, Sydney's season, and I get that, but I felt like the yo-yoing decision of Shapiro and the bear got a tad repetitive by the end of it, and then paired that with the lack of character focus outside of Sydney and Carmy, it just felt like an isolated experience, when usually we experience many different things. So next season, I'd like to see more dedicated character-focused episodes to break up the main story, but also allow us to gain a deeper understanding. Give me an Ibra episode, give me an episode on sweeps, or even give me a flashback episode to Mike and Carmy. Because, like Tina, I never thought I needed an episode on her until I actually got one. There are stories there to be told within the family of the bear, and the show definitely has the capability of mirroring what it did so well in season 2. The show's loss of heart. Mikey was always at the heart of this show, in everything that everybody was doing. However, in this season, we didn't really get any Mike. We just got a brief scene during the beginning of the first episode when Carmy mentioned how we wanted to open up a restaurant with him. I get why that was included, because it provided the whole point as to why Carmy took it over when he was grieving his brother, because he thought that's what he'd want. Within the previous seasons, we'd usually see Carmy's relationship with Mike and Cousin's relationship with him, and it was something that was almost the beating heart of the show, and seeing it on screen would kind of bring us back to ground zero. This man ended things for himself and left a gaping hole in the heart of everybody that knew him, and in this season, that hole just felt like it was filled slightly. I understand that the reality of life is that you're not going to mourn somebody every day for the rest of your life in the same way as when they first pass away. But some of the greatest moments in the show came from when we were seeing direct correlation of Richie grieving, Carmy grieving, and them not truly knowing what to do. So one would probably imagine that when the emotional pull and the heart of the show starts to lose its weight for not only the audience but for the main characters, then the show is almost drifting from its center point and it's morphing into something entirely different. And I do truly believe that when the characters stop having Mikey at the heart of what they're doing, it won't be the same show. Relationships are being repaired with the likes of Donna and Carmy, and I get it, it's life, but a happy family isn't why I tuned into this show. Trauma, upset, stress, grief, heartbreak, and a lack of direction in Carmy is why I originally started watching it, finding the beauty in those darkest of times, and for me, the beauty has started to fade. Have they gotten lazy? Now, when I say lazy, I don't mean outright lazy with the writing, but I feel like in the first 2 seasons of the show, there was a lot of originality that made the bear stand out in the way that it captured the emotions of the chaos, but also the tranquility and peace in the cooking. The single-take shot episodes, the rapid nature of the camera movements, the shooting and film for season 2 episode 6 because it was a flashback, and the gorgeous glossiness and choreographed nature and the presentation of the food. Immersion was what made this show so good, and those few things, to name just a few, were what really allowed the show to stand out. Episode 10 in this season had a bit of a single take shot feel to it, but it wasn't quite the same as season 1 and season 2. It was just longer takes with cuts, which I feel is a bit of a shame. I truly believe that the scene with Carmy, Sydney and Richie outside of the restaurant, with Carmy dropping arguably the biggest news in the show of him leaving the restaurant, would have worked so much better if it were a single take. This is because the tension and anger would have just been building up for around 25 minutes until it eventually exploded and we'd have been begging for a cut. But they didn't do it. In the first couple of seasons, it feels like that's the approach that they definitely would have taken. Is it because they know that they almost don't need to do that now to stand out because it's been done, and they know that the viewers are going to watch the show regardless? Honestly, I hope not, because the bear isn't the same without that creativity. I don't think they've gotten lazy per se, but I just think they've gotten complacent in feeling like they don't need to do it, which I think goes against everything that the show stands for. The food is at the core of the show, and even though there was a fair chunk of time in the kitchen, I don't remember the dishes like I did from the previous seasons. So I'm hoping that creativity will get sprinkled over season 5 because it needs it. My conclusion. So all in all, when it comes to The Bear, it's still a phenomenal show, but I do think it's dropped down a peg or two when you compare it to the first 2 seasons. Those first 2 seasons felt like it was all about establishing, and then once they got to a point of establishment, the quality just nosedived, and I feel like some of the points that I mentioned are a strong reason for that. The Bear coming back for a season 5 is something that I'm on the fence about, especially now Carmy is leaving the restaurant. If he's leaving, this has to be the final season because there's no show without him. His family issues with his mother seem to be resolved, he's grieving in a different way and he's looking to address it, and he's actually got a bit of a relationship going on with Claire. So his life is better now. So whilst I feel this would have been an alright place for the show to conclude, I'm hoping that season 5 will be the end because I don't think we need much more of it, and I also don't think that anything will top the first 2 seasons. In a year's time, if season 5 ends up being the best, then I'll eat my words, but for now, I'll stand by what I said because it's genuinely what I believe. So, there you have it, the downfall of the Bear. If you want to see more videos on the Bear, then I've got plenty over on the channel. I'll put a couple down below, maybe why season 2 episode 6 is perfect, and I'll put the full breakdown for season 4 there as well. What did you think of season 4? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.